Okay, I'll call this meeting of the Eureka City Council to order. But please, everybody sit down, please. All right. Pam, could we have a roll call?
Mayor Yeager.
Here.
Councilmember Brady.
Here.
Councilmember Atkins.
Here.
Councilmember Newman is absent. Councilmember Cherubellini.
Here.
Councilmember Albin is absent.
Okay. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, we didn't have a closed session tonight, so there'll be no reports out of closed session. And under mayor's announcements, we have a proclamation in recognition of Human Rights Awareness Month, and we have someone here to accept that. Nancy? Okay, let me read the proclamation. This is a proclamation in recognition of Human Rights Awareness Month, December 2014. Whereas the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in December 1948, this marked the first attempt in human history to set down the minimum rights every person should enjoy. And whereas this document states the necessity to recognize the inherent dignity and equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family in the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world, to which everyone is entitled, without distinction of any kind to race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or birth status, and whereas the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has inspired international covenants, treaties, and agreements not only protecting the rights of men and women of all races, creeds, but specifically enumerating and protecting the rights and unique needs of children, indigenous and tribal peoples, refugees, and political prisoners. And whereas the County of Humboldt, in compliance with the State of California statutes, adopted ordinances establishing and defining the work of the Humboldt County Human Rights Commission to aid in the eradication of discrimination based on color, race, religion, creed, national origin, ancestry, physical disability, mental medical condition, genetic information, marital status, sex, general, familiar status, source of income, gender identity, gender expression, age, sexual orientation, or social economic status. Therefore, I, Mayor Frank Yeager, on behalf of the Eureka City Council, do hereby proclaim December 2014 as Human Rights Awareness Month and encourage all citizens to educate themselves about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the privileges that enjoyed by all of us in a free society.
Go ahead. We just have a moment. Thank you very much on behalf of the Human Rights Commission. I would like to say also that it's quite fitting, since the topic of housing solutions was in your earlier special session and on the agenda tonight. And I'd like to read you just one small part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 25, which says, everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care, and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. So we are operating, hopefully, consistent with the universal principles of human rights, and we thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, we move to council reports. Does any council member have a report they need to present tonight? Nope. Nope. Okay. No boards and commissions reports, so we'll move to resolutions, and this is the resolution declaring the canvass of returns and results of the general municipal election. Pam?
Council, Mayor, and Council, before you are three resolutions for adoption. Those will be accepting the canvass of returns as prepared by the county clerk, and they are declaring for Measure Q, Measure R, and for our municipal officers of mayor and council members for Ward 1, Ward 3, and Ward 5.
Okay. Any questions for Pam? Okay. We'll open the item for public discussion. Is there anyone present that'd like to comment on the agenda item before we move on? Thank you. We'll close public comment then. I'll entertain a motion at this point from council. Linda?
I move that we adopt a resolution of the City of Eureka accepting the canvass of returns and declaring the results of the general municipal election held in the City of Eureka on Tuesday, November 4th, 2014, for the purpose of electing certain municipal officers, and 2, adopt a resolution of the City of Eureka accepting the canvass of returns and declaring the results of the general municipal election held in the City of Eureka held on Tuesday, November 4th, 2014, for the purpose of submitting the electors the City Eureka ballot measure R relating to the minimum wage ordinance, and adopt a resolution of the City of Eureka accepting the canvass of returns and declaring the results of the general municipal election held in the City of Eureka Tuesday, November 4th, 2014, for the purpose of submitting to the electors of the City of Eureka Measure Q relating to the extension of the supplemental transaction and use tax and the installation of officers and oath of office.
I second.
All right, been moved and seconded. Any further comment? Go ahead and vote.
3 yes votes, council members Newman and Albin absent, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to the installation of officers, oath of office. So we'll start with Pam and I.
Mayor, if you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I
Frank Ager,
do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
solemnly affirm that I will defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Charter of the City of Eureka,
and the Charter of the City of Eureka,
that I take this obligation freely
and I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter
upon which I am about to enter
in the capacity of Mayor of the City of Eureka.
in the capacity of Mayor of the City of Eureka.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yep. All right, Marion, and okay, Marion, raise your right hand. All right, I do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California and the Charter of the City of Eureka, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter in the capacity of a council member of the City of Eureka. Congratulations. Kim? Come on, next to Kim. Okay, Kim, raise your right hand. Okay. Repeat after me. I, Kim Burgell, do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California and the Charter of the City of Eureka. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter in the capacity of council member of the City of Eureka. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, Natalie? Okay, Natalie, raise your right hand. I,
Natalie Arroyo,
do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California and the Charter of the City of Eureka. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter in the capacity of a council member for the City of Eureka. Congratulations. All right, welcome to a new era of Eureka politics. All right, in regards to public comment on our continued hearing on the homeless issue, we have a sign-up sheet out here, so if you'd like to sign up to speak during that time, I'd appreciate it if you do so. At this point, then, we'll move to the general public comment period, and this is the time for members of the public who wish to be heard on matters that do not appear on the agenda. And pursuant to City Council Resolution 2011-22, the City Council policy is to limit each speaker to 3 minutes. Such time allotment or portion thereof shall not be transferred to other speakers. The public will be allowed to speak concurrently with the calling of an agenda item following the staff presentation of that item. Pursuant to the Bound Act, the City Council cannot take action on any item that does not appear on the agenda. So at this time, is there anyone present that wants to speak on any item that does not appear on the agenda? Please step forward.
My name's Trent Zelenik, and I'm here as a father, as a local businessman, as a pastor, and as a concerned citizen for Eureka. And so I just want to pray. I guess I can still do that, so I'm going to pray. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for these new civil servants that have been elected. I thank you for those who work for our city, who serve this city. And I'm asking you, Father, to give them wisdom, to direct them. It says in your word that by wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established. Through knowledge its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures. It says that we're to pray for the peace and prosperity of our city where we live, because if it prospers, we will prosper as well. So, Father, I ask that you would prosper this city. I'm asking you, Lord, that you would give this city new, innovative ways to bring new markets, new sources of income, new revenues, new exports. I'm asking you, Lord, in this next season, in this new year, that you would grant us prosperity in this city. I'm asking that you would grant us peace in this city. Lord God, I'm asking you for a spiritual revival in this city. And I'm asking this in the mighty name of Yeshua, the Lord and Savior. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Trent. Is there anyone else like to address the council at this time under public comment? Step forward.
My proposal is that the city of Eureka and its police department patrols the city in the future without the use of guns. On the average, every day, a citizen in this country is killed by police through guns. For a city the size of Eureka, that amounts to one time in 30 years. I know of 2 instances now in the last 10 years. We've had our quota of tragedy. There's not a situation in Eureka which requires shooting people. We evaluate each of the situations in which an officer finds himself or herself, and we develop procedures for taking care of those situations without the use of guns that provides adequately for the safety of the people in Eureka and for the officers involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other person who'd like to address the council on an item that does not appear on the agenda? Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public comment period at this time. All right, that'll take us to public hearings, and our first public hearing is the Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 grant application. Wendy?
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and City Council. The City of Eureka has the opportunity to submit a grant application for the purchase of one paratransit vehicle in the amount of $60,000 and a dial-a-ride and dial-a-lift reservation system in the amount of $75,000 for a total grant amount of $135,000. As a requirement of this grant application, we are required to hold a public hearing to determine whether or not there are any nonprofit excuse me, corporations or associations who are readily able to provide this dial-a-ride service for seniors and individuals with disabilities. Certified letters were sent out to the following nonprofit agencies notifying them of the proposed grant application and this public hearing. They were sent to California Department of Rehabilitation, to HCAR, Adult Day Healthcare, Senior Resource Center, Redwood Coast Regional Center, Area 1 Agency on Aging, and the Redwood Community Action Agency. In conclusion, staff recommends that you hold a public hearing, accept comments and testimony regarding whether there are any nonprofit corporations or associations who are readily able to provide this dial-a-ride service, and in the event there are none, adopt a resolution of the City Council for finding of public hearing for Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 grant application, and adopt a resolution of the City Council authorizing application for FTA Section 5310 grant funds and authorizing the city manager to sign the state agreement for such funds. And that's all that I have, unless you have questions.
All right, thank you. Council have any questions for Finance Director at this time? No? Okay, thank you. We'll open the item for public discussion. Actually, we'll open the public hearing at this time. Is there anyone present that would like to speak on this agenda item? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and return it to council.
Well, if there are no other questions or comments from council, I would like to move that we adopt a resolution of the City Council for finding of public hearing for Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 grant application, and adopt a resolution of the City Council authorizing application for FTA Section 5310 grant funds and authorizing the city manager to sign the state agreement for such funds.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further comment by council? All right, let's go ahead and vote on it.
Unanimous yes vote, motion carries.
Okay, second public hearing is CDBG grant amendment. Brian?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The public hearing at hand deals with the amendment of an open community development block grant number 13 CDBG 9455 for the Carson Block Rehabilitation Project. Because of new rules issued by the state in July 2014, the city must use program income, or PI funds, prior to expending funds from this open grant. However, by adding what the state refers to as supplemental activities to the grant, the city is able to recoup the spent PI at the back end. The PI and open grant dollars can be used interchangeably. Program income is money that comes back into the city's coffers as loans are repaid. Currently, the city has approximately $400,000 of these PI funds on hand. Of that $400,000, approximately $225,000 is earmarked for a business assistance loan for the Diver Bar and Grill project, which is on your consent calendar tonight. That means that in reality, approximately $175,000 remains available for supplemental activities. After a public hearing was conducted on August 19th of this year to solicit input on potential projects for CDBG funding, staff discussed supplemental activity options internally and with the state. After analyzing the options, staff recommends that a single supplemental activity, a continuation of the city's existing business assistance loan program, be amended into the open grant. Doing so will allow economic development staff to continue to provide loans for business startup or expansion, while at the same time ensuring none of the city's on-hand PI funds are left on the table. With that, staff recommends that council first hold a public hearing and then adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Eureka authorizing the amendment of Community Development Block Grant number 13 CDBG 9455 with a supplemental activity for a business assistance loan program in the amount of $400,000. And I'm available for any questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian? Okay. At this point, then, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone present that would like to speak on this agenda item? Okay. Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and return it to council for your action.
If there's no more discussion,
I would move that we adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Eureka authorizing the amendment of Community Development Block Grant number 13-CDBG 9455 with a supplemental activity for a business assistance loan program in the amount of $400,000.
Second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Let's go ahead and vote on that.
Unanimous yes vote, motion carries.
Okay, that moves us to the consent calendar, and all matters listed under this category considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted in one motion. And pursuant to City Council Resolution 2011-22, if a member of the public would like an item on the consent calendar pulled and discussed separately, that request shall be made to a council member prior to a meeting. Unless a specific request is made by a council member, the consent calendar will not be read and there will be no separate discussion of these items. Is there any item on the consent calendar that the council wants to have pulled? Okay, I'll entertain a motion then to approve the consent calendar.
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
I will second because we had to read the minutes and all that stuff. Okay?
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Go ahead and vote.
Unanimous yes vote, motion carries.
Okay, that takes us right to item 10, which is the homeless workshop follow-up. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly we had an hour and 15 minutes for staff presentation and public comment. I know there's still members of the public who didn't have a chance to comment earlier on the workshop. I think you can take it to the public comment and council questions and then we'll get to the direction part from council after that.
Go ahead, Linda.
I guess if you want to take additional public comment before council questions.
Yeah. All right. All right, we'll open the item for public discussion at this point then. So is there anyone present that would like to, Pam, you have the list. If you'll call the names up and they can please step forward.
I will call three at a time, and if you can queue up, that would be great. Pam Sistrom, Bob Tuel, and Jennifer Kalt.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Pam Sistrom, 40-plus year RN in the state of California and Eureka resident. Congratulations to all incoming, especially our new council members. Poor Frank, or lucky Frank. About the homeless or houseless issue, to say that this is a complex problem is just such an understatement. So many, many different issues come into play, not the least of which is economics. I noticed that the very day that we had a cleanup of the camps on the bay, they did the same thing. They literally bulldozed a place. I think it's called the Jungle in San Jose. I couldn't help but noticing that they mentioned that the average rental of a one-bedroom apartment in San Jose is $2,700 a month, and they have an economy, but I think I have no solutions, but I have empathy for all sides of the issue. Nobody likes poop on the streets, nobody likes garbage, but these are human beings, and I heard somebody talk about we need permanent housing solutions. Well, there is no such thing as a permanent housing solution. I've been a homeowner, I'm a renter now, and that wasn't necessarily by choice. I'm 73 years old. I'm still working 2 jobs. And I went to Humboldt Area Foundation to find out what would happen if I retired from my 2 jobs to live on my $1,200 or so a month Social Security retirement. And they said, well, you would not be eligible for either Medi-Cal or food stamps. So I would then be forced to live on that $1,200 a month and pay 20% of all my medical. So, you know, we live in tough times for a lot of people, and there was a time in my life when I was pretty close to homeless and pretty desperate, and I remember going to the Queen of Angels Hospital when I was in my 20s, full-on addicted, strung out on meth, heroin, whatever, and coming from a rich Hollywood family, And I would go to the Queen of Angels because people would put their cigarettes out before they go in the hospital and leave long butts. And I knew to go there. You know, I've been in and out of recovery for the last 40 years, and you never know when you might be that person or when someone close to you. There's so many issues here. There's homelessness, there's mental illness, there's substance abuse issues, there's the economy. I have empathy for the birds and the wildlife that are being affected. Years ago, my husband and I were at my mother-in-law's, and she was wealthy, white woman who'd never been hungry or homeless. And there was a show on about Africa and the poor in Africa, and she said, well, what do they want now? And my husband, he said, it's a small planet, Mom, and them are us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Tuel, Eureka, and I also want to welcome the new council members. You don't know what you're in for. But being realistic, you know, the presentation that was given this evening, Bayshore Mall, you actually think Bayshore Mall owners are going to allow that in their parking lot down there? When daily their stores are getting ripped off thousands of dollars, and the merchants along Broadway, the corridor, are having so much problems. And just today, there was an individual that was kicked out of one of the merchants down there, and today he came back, was kicked out again, and he ended up pulling a knife on one of the delivery truck drivers down there. And he was a homeless guy. Yesterday, there was a group got into an altercation out in front of the store. They got kicked out the area with a lot of verbal abuse. They went down 14th Street and finished it off down there with a big fight right in front of one of the businesses down on at the end of 14th Street. And we got to be realistic. And I'm surprised that the chief did not discuss the criminal activity that the merchants are being subject to down on the Broadway corridor. And I agree, it's a complicated problem. And I don't know what the exact answer is, but something has to be done with the criminal activity before one of these merchants or somebody gets hurt and seriously hurt. And it needs to be addressed. I don't know if it's more police activity down on corridor, the Broadway area, but something has to be done. This is a never-ending problem with the merchants down there. And I ask each and every one of you to go down and talk to all the merchants along the Broadway corridor to find out where their problems are coming from. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Kalt, and I'm the director of Humboldt Baykeeper. Welcome to the new city council members. Very excited about the next era of the Eureka City government. And I commend you for taking on such a huge issue in your first meeting. The homelessness issue has been a problem here for decades, as it has been in many communities up and down the state and throughout the country, as you all know. And I really want to encourage you to move forward with examining solutions. There are a lot of problems here, but we definitely need humane solutions to the homelessness problem, and it's not going to be easy, I know that, but there have been increasing impacts to Humboldt Bay and to many of the properties that the city has bought with public funds from the Coastal Conservancy and other agencies explicitly for open space and wildlife habitat and public recreation. And creating a safe environment for people to use those properties the way they were intended is important, but also Humboldt Baykeeper has done several volunteer events where we've gone into the Pelco Marsh and done cleanups during Coastal Cleanup Day and whatnot. We've worked with John Shelter, and you know, it's heartbreaking what goes on there. And if you've never been to a cleanup there, it's hard to even explain how tragic it is. And yes, there are criminals, but there are women living alone, there are children living that way. It's extremely hazardous for volunteers because there's human waste, there's syringes, there's hazardous waste like batteries and all kinds of plastic being burned in fires. People retaliate against each other by burning their belongings. And there's really no way to explain how unsafe a person must feel not being able to close a door and have a roof over their head. And so, yes, the water quality impacts are severe in many places. That's not the only impact to Humboldt Bay. There are lots of impacts, but these are impacts that people see on a daily basis. You drive over the Eureka Slough Bridge, then you see people living under that bridge in tents, and they don't have bathrooms. People have spoken about the bathroom issue, and it's not just homeless people that need bathrooms. The city of Eureka desperately needs more public restrooms, and I can count on one hand. I have in my mind the places I can go now that the Baykeeper office is in Arcata. I don't have a key to get into an office to use a bathroom anymore. So, the Truesdale bathroom at the Vista Point there is a great thing because you can go use a bathroom without having money to buy something. So I encourage you to move forward and just explore the different solutions city staff has put forward. And lastly, I just want to say I also really encourage you to explore how to work with Humboldt County because they do have a tremendous budget towards solving a lot of these social problems that you guys don't have. So
All right, thanks.
good luck.
Thank you, Jennifer.
The next three speakers to queue up would be Sandra Warshal, Janelle Ager, and Sadit Eckenburg.
Go ahead, Richard. Richard, go ahead.
Okay, now, and those mergers that get all the merchandise stolen, then eventually you're gonna have to raise their prices on all their stock in order to make up the lost stock that's being stolen by the homeless. And not only the homeless, there are some of the other citizens that do that shoplifting too. It's not just the homeless that shoplift. I've seen other citizens of Eureka, poor citizens of Eureka, go into a store and take something and stick it in their pocket. A couple of times I saw them do it and I say, hey, you shouldn't do that because the merchants are going to end up having to raise their prices in order to recover the price of the item that you stole, that you're in the process of shoplifting, and they still walked out of the store with it. And it's really hard to and I'm wondering what percentage of the homeless are veterans from all the Gulf War, the 3 Gulf Wars, and other local families that lost their jobs at different times, loggers and lumbermen especially, that lost their homes because they couldn't afford to pay the bank to rest of their loan.
Thank you, Richard. Next speaker. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to warn you, I have no trouble standing up. I have trouble sitting down. I've been thinking about this in the deepest part of my being because, like many here, I care so deeply that we still have people living outside in this civilized country in a land of plenty, and people have tried so hard, and we've had wonderful agencies, wonderful efforts. To kind of go back to the issue, I read the federal report which said that there's actually a federal goal to end homelessness, which began in 2010 for first veterans and chronically homeless, and then 10 years for families. Okay, so where does this bring us? I think that what typically happens is that one side blames the other. The people who are sympathetic to the homeless blame the government and society, and people who are not sympathetic to the homeless blame the homeless for their behavior. Well, I think we need to look at it as the elephant, that everybody has a piece of the truth. And so we don't need to get into the argument about whether some of the people are acting badly and some of the, society is acting badly. But that's why I am so enthusiastic and so proud of this community to move forward and just focus on how to keep these people, whatever they are, whoever they are, whether they're good, bad, or whatever, keep them warm, dry, safe, in a legal environment. I used to go to a lot of meetings and I stopped, and so instead I've just started to strike up conversations with people just to get to know them as human beings, not like, oh, you're homeless, tell me about that. And I've met the most remarkable people. You would fall in love with them. You would fall in love with them. They're the family members who we all have that are so difficult, but we love them anyway. And that's what kind of moved me forward to, there's a 70-year-old woman. I don't want to talk too much because I don't want to violate her privacy. She was sleeping on the sidewalk. The police evicted her from the sidewalk. She ended up in front of St. Vinny's. St. Vinny's evicted her because there was a complaint. She ended up back on the sidewalk. Then she ended up somewhere. She has a heart condition. She ended up in emergency 3 times that I know of. She's ended up, the last I heard, she was in the Dell camp. I kind of lost track of her. But she doesn't feel safe, and she has to have she has to have people around her who protect her. So I think what it really gets down to, and I've really given this a lot of thought. I started to read the New Testament, and I'm not Christian, but because I think it's really the Christian churches who have stood up and asked us to call upon our higher selves to find a solution to this. And then I went to another book on Christian philosophy, which I found very helpful. But the person who really solved it for me personally is Martin Luther King Jr. And I would ask, you're making a difficult decision. You're going to get phone calls if you decide to move forward with a sanctuary village or a sanctuary, the tent city. It's not the perfect solution, but this is what it offers an opportunity for. And I think we all share this. I think in our hearts we are a good community, and this is what we believe. He said that it's about agape love. It's not that you even like the person. You might hate their behavior, but you love them anyway. And so what I'm asking is, by creating this place where they can come to and be treated with dignity and respect instead of like despised people, that we can have an opportunity to grow a circle of love and care and find out who they really are. Because I sympathize with the people who say we have too much services. I don't think we have too much services, but I think it's very complicated, because if you get to know somebody, they do have complicated reasons for being out there that are not easily resolved. But if we have a place where they can stay, we can get to know them, and then we have a better chance of helping them to come inside. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person. Who's next, Pam? Okay, go ahead.
Hello. In 2011, myself and a couple other people went and talked to Linda Atkins because we were concerned about the homeless. And we were with a group of people that were working, trying to figure out what we could do. We needed, the camp, the ideas. And the group completely fell apart over one simple issue, is were we just going to go and set up a camp and help people and risk losing all of our stuff and being safe, or were we going to go through the process of trying to convince some government agency to give us a little piece of property or not break down the camp? And that's where we still are. Except for today. Today, you all are actually talking about doing something, and it is so wonderful. And I want to thank AHA for their work in bringing people together to talk about it and get excited. But before there can be a mini village with nice houses or anything. Tonight there are people that are out in the cold. And I want to encourage you. There was a mention of the shelter crisis. You can declare a shelter crisis, and that might help with some of your liability issues. And don't be thinking that you have to set up a camp with 250 people and take care of the whole problem. Maybe you can't, but there are people that are out there that want to help you, and find ways to let them do that. If that means a couple different campsites where people, band together to make it happen. If they only can go there and stay during the night, that will make things better. But right now, tonight, every night, there are people that are without a place to sleep. And that's what all the homeless have in common. That's the one thing. Whether they're crooks, whether they're, somebody's grandmother, whether they're somebody's father, whether they're kids, the only thing that they have in common is that they don't have a place to sleep. And that's what you need to, that's the first thing that needs to be addressed. And I'm so excited. I want to go back to Fortuna and tell them that, hey, there is hope. And because there are my husband just talked to, there's people in Fortuna that go to my husband works at the hospital, and they come and they collect food, excess food, and the hospital is one of their places. And he was told, there's 60 people in in Fortuna that are sleeping out in camps. So you're not alone.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Sadie Eckenburg, and I'm from Rio Dell, but I've been in Humboldt County since '79, and I've seen you guys bulldoze homeless for 40 years. And I've seen homeless shit on the ground for 40 years, and I hate to say it, but I'm really glad to have met some of the council people now, and it's really awesome to see them willing to work with us and coming to meetings. But in 1974, the Spokane World's Fair was going on in Spokane, Washington, and that whole year they had 300 acres that they set aside and put a fence around it. It was on the river, but put a fence around it so it could be maintained with one gate. And they encouraged all homeless, all transient, all people of the street or of travel abilities. They're pilgrims, in the Bible they were pilgrims. They still are pilgrims. We still are. But the police had people go down there, and they gave them a free place to live. The city supplied big trucks with water faucets that people could come up and fill their own things with water. They supplied toilets. They supplied a shower structure. They supplied campfire wood. And then there were two kitchens that were set up by church groups that came in and gave fixed hot meals all the time. The highway patrol, the sheriffs, they brought in roadkill, a lot of things like that. People donated. But there was an average of 800 people on that campsite, 300 acres, every day for a year. And there was no crime. They did have 2 officers that stayed in a trailer on the property. They didn't carry guns. They were there because they had one of them was a paramedic, I believe. They had the first aid. They had the telephone that could call out. People were stopped at the gate. If you stayed there, you went in, found a campsite. It was just open. You could just make your own campsites, make your setup, and then go back on the map and pinpoint it. The people that lived there could drive their vehicles in. Other people had to park outside and walk in to visit. But it worked for a year there. And in fact, there's even newspaper articles of how they put out a fire that had gotten out of hand one night, that the fire department had to leave to go get more water, and the people put it out. There are solutions out there. There are people that are willing to help. We have wood, we have things like that we could supply. I'm saying it's time to really make human beings feel like human beings.
All right, thank you.
I have two more persons ready to speak, Stephen Smith
Yes.
and Leslie Castellano. And I will be putting the sign-up sheet back out if anyone else is interested in speaking.
All right, so basically you have to keep it small. Small is important because it remains a community. When you have people that are struggling with drug addiction, it's a peer support group, and it works really well if you keep it small. I was saying that means we need all 12 spots. One at first it's great. I also want to say that if you make a village, it's going to be national attention for the city of Eureka, and it's going to be positive. It's dealing with the homeless in a compassionate way, and it'll be in the news for about 3 weeks. Occupy Madison was at least. And then what I want to say is it boils down to affordability. If you look at how much money we spend on homelessness per year, and then you see how many tiny houses we can build with that money versus what we're getting out of permanent supportive housing right now, it's no question. And that's it. Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Leslie Castellano. My thoughts aren't completely organized, but hi, everybody. I think for me, what comes up with talking about people who are houseless is that I do sincerely believe that every life has the same capacity for hope, and that because of difference in economic ability or capacity, I don't believe that changes the capacity for a life to have hope. And I do have friends who are houseless, and that and part of the reason I have those friends is because I treat them with dignity. Sorry, I get emotional. But and you know, I have an art studio right next to the soup kitchen, which I think some people think is like the worst part of town, sort of a thing. And I've been there for 10 years, and you know, a lot of those folks are my friends, and I've always treated them as my neighbors. And you know, like many years ago, my car got broken into once, and everyone from the street chipped in to repair my window to my car, and that's because of the relationship we've developed over years. And I do believe that. I mean, I would be honored to live in a city where I feel like people are making proactive steps towards change and towards treating people with dignity, because I think that's actually how community is created. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to comment on the agenda item? All right, seeing no one. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kathy Sibelo, and I am a resident of Eureka, and I want to say congratulations to the new council members. I'm a great dog lover. You know, I have 4 dogs of my own, and about 3 years ago, the city gave the dog people from the dog park a piece of property for the dogs. If they can give that property for the dogs, why can't they give it to humans? I'm just saying, you know, it's taken us a long time to build this dog park, and it's still in the process. We've had to jump through hoops and everything, but we're doing it. And why can't we do it for homeless people or for people that need a home? You know, I have a home now, but I'm about probably 3 months away from not having a home. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Do we have anybody else that'd like to address the council under public comment at this time?
Just one thing really quick. I wanted to speak to what Leslie said and also to what Kathy said. Part of the reason why we don't get things done is because we're fearful and we're afraid to interface with people that we think are criminal, or they're not clean, or whatever. And I really think that if we had some way of encouraging people to participate, like Leslie and where she lives, being close with her neighbors. I've traveled a little bit and I've found places where people are not allowed to become destitute. They have community councils that allow people to come before them, talk about what their issues are, and they support them to not become destitute. So that it's a period of a trial thing. You know, we get services, but we could meet them out differently so that we could actually not let people get really bad off. We could know them better, and we could spend some time actually building relationship. And I know maybe this doesn't sound very coherent, but it's exactly what's happening on the street next door to Freemill. Is getting to know people and being able to not let them get destitute any more than they already are, and meeting people where they are. We do this in our services all the time. We could be better about how we do that. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the council under public comment? All right, seeing no one, we will close the public comment period and return it to council for whatever recommendations you have. Manager, do you have anything further before the council comments?
No, I think certainly what we tried to do from a staff level tonight was put some parameters on the issue, so you understood what we have been doing, what some of the challenges are with continuing that type of processes, from whether it's a park and recreation standpoint of going in and cleaning up homeless camps to some of the enforcement issues, and at least have done some initial study of what it potentially could look like, whether it's the tiny houses or a sanctioned type of camp. Certainly, though, we believe, I think everyone on our staff, that the homeless policy paper as part of the general plan update laid out some pretty clear vision in terms of what needs to be done in terms of solving homelessness. We want to approach that, I think, more directly still than what has been done. We've been in contact with focus strategies on laying out additional implementation steps. So we don't want to lose sight of how we get to some of this longer-term solution. But I think as we've been dealing with this enforcement issue, we really want to know from the council, do you want us to keep going down this path? Do you want us to look at some different paths? So I think that were a couple of the key issues tonight.
All right, Melinda, go ahead.
Okay, well, there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of information out there. I just want to say that I was one of the council designees on the Focus Strategies group that met under our general plan auspices. And a number of stakeholders, maybe some of you even out there, were part of that group. The county was at the table. Many other service providers and other people that provide resources to this population were at the table. You know, we invested in this whole process and worked through the issues along with national experts on what works and what has worked and what the strategies that work in other places. It just isn't a somebody's white paper or somebody's idea that that they sold to the city of Eureka. It was developed with a group of stakeholders and very, very smart people on the topic that did a lot of research and a lot of well-renowned throughout the nation. So I really support the strategies that are outlined in the white paper from Focus Strategies. I think that is the right direction to go. The county has bought in on that, and they are active partners. I think Director Crandall outlined the programs that they are pursuing, which were all recommended in the Focus Strategies paper, including the partnership with the city, our Eureka Police Department, and even mentioned, $500,000 that is earmarked, in pursuing the strategies that are outlined in this paper. And what the approach is that to solve the homeless issue is housing. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line. There are a lot of other issues that many of these people have, but it's been shown and proven time and time again that it's housing, that we got to get these people into housing. The cases so far that we've identified in the 30 to 60 day short-term period of what they've fondly termed as the frequent flyers, have actually housed people in rapid housing, and it's worked for them, which is exactly what the consultants from Focus Strategies has told us. Mr. Crandall, the director, also discussed the repurposing of the MAC to fill that gap left by HUD that has that assessment and identification piece to it, along with short-term and maybe even subsidized rapid rehousing, and then supportive housing. It is a problem here, but that's the focus, and that's what's going to help us end this problem, or at least have the biggest impact on it. The Focus Strategies folks specifically said, and I'll read this to you, that approaches to better manage the homelessness population is not the answer. They say they strongly advise that the city not pursue approaches directed at better managing the existing problems, such as by increasing the frequency of police sweeps or creating legalized camping areas or tent cities. These approaches will not solve the underlying problem that people do not have a safe or healthy place to live, and there is little evidence that management approaches do much to mitigate negative community impacts of the homelessness issue. The other thing I wanted to bring up is our communities actually experienced this before. Some time ago, in 1997, as a matter of fact, we were sending people out to the South Jetty. I don't know if any of you were around here or remember that incident. It was terrible. It was a horrible thing. It took probably 10 years to accumulate out there, but by the time the public health officer, who was Ann Lindsay at the time, had to declare a public health hazard because of some chronic diarrhea that was occurring out there, along with the crime, and serious crime like rapes and assaults and those types of things. There were 300 people out there that they had to help relocate and clean up, and right on our shoreline and impacting the environment to degrees that seemed insurmountable. But it took over $300,000 just to clean up the trash, let alone the other resources from the social services to help house and remove people. I have an article here that said they had 330 tons of solid waste, including human waste, that were removed from there. 150 cars and trucks were crushed and hauled away. 2,000 tires, 200 car batteries, hazardous materials, needles, drug manufacturing. It was a horrendous thing. And what was happening is that this campground, which wasn't sanctioned, but it was kind of sanctioned in that even the city police at the time, when they would approach people in the city that were homeless, would send them out of the city to the South Jetty, to where it became the county's problem. And that's how it accumulated to a point where people heard by word of mouth that were coming. Now, I know maybe we're talking here about something more smaller and more manageable, but nonetheless, it's, these are issues that I think we can't ignore. And I think it's also pretty unrealistic to expect that the homeless, all of the homeless people, are going to want to live in a sanctioned campground that's policed and regulated to one degree or another. Now, you know, I think I've done my homework. You know, I have a whole file here. I've got tons of articles from all across the country. You know, I personally went to Oregon and visited Opportunity Village and took a tour and talked to the people. It was a nice place for the 30 people that lived there, but they were all very high-functioning homeless people, some with even jobs. And it didn't really impact where their real problems were, in the brush and the bushes, and the people that couldn't qualify, that didn't have mental health issues or health issues there. The other thing I noted is that the cities that were talked to, and some of the, where did that go here? Yeah, most of these programs are funded or run by nonprofits. The city may provide the property, but the nonprofits or even Andrew Heblin created a nonprofit to create the tiny houses. None of the city funds were being impacted for that. And I think that's a really important model to look at, because I can tell you right now, and I'm looking at the city manager, that we just don't have a pot of money set aside to create a encampment. But I have great concerns about how it might grow to a population that we can't deal with. And mainly, I think that we should stick with the strategies that are proven, that have shown that actually end homeless in places like Salt Lake City, for example, and other models that these kinds of strategies have been implemented. So I'll stop there, sorry.
So I have a number of questions for staff, since we didn't get the chance yet to ask questions about the presentation. I don't know if we want to do them all at once. Okay. So I was wondering how much housing we know exists as a part of the available housing for rapid rehousing. How many people can be housed, or how many units? Do we have that information?
Maybe we can have, I know Rob is coming up, maybe both Rob and Andy can come up to these front seats, and we'll bring Miles up here. And that way we'll have everybody up here for any other additional questions that council has.
Thank you. So I'll move on to my next one. I'll try to do these fast because I have 7. Have staff reviewed options for parking for people who live in vehicles, similar to what Eugene has done with the local churches and nonprofits there?
Yes, I did look into that, and it fundamentally is the same, takes up a lot more space. So what I sketched on there was 20-foot by 20-foot spaces for tents. A typical parking space is 10 feet by 20, so it's the same area more or less. But cars need places to drive, and so it doubles or triples the amount of space, so you can house a third as many people with cars involved.
Okay, thank you.
Rob, could you lift that mic up, because it was pushed down? Okay, there we go. Thanks.
The next one's for you also. Okay. You mentioned that Focus Strategies put a dollar amount on their implementation plan. Do you have that on hand?
I do, yes. So I asked them to put together a plan for implementation. It was 6 months, so from January through July, and then $21,000. And so that just arrived this morning, so I just reviewed that today. We could look at the scope and determine whether we wanted more or less from that scope, but it literally just came in today.
So that's $21K for them to create the implementation plan within 6 months.
To create an implementation plan and to hold our hands through the first several stages, the first 6 months. So it's not just another piece of paper, but it's actually their national expertise in how to implement the implementation plan and helping us implement it.
Okay, thank you. I think the next one's for Miles. Did the city get any site cleanup support from county environmental health, public health, or public works, any of those county divisions?
For the property that's, no, all of the cleanups that we perform are on city-owned properties.
Okay.
And so, no, we have not received any help. We've received some complaints from environmental health related to some of the encampments on city-owned property, but we haven't received any physical help from them.
And since water flows, do you see any opportunities for environmental health or other county divisions to help?
Yes, when we discussed the one complaint that was brought to us by environmental health, they were made aware of different areas and different locations and the potential for, you know, the possibilities that we're talking about tonight, and they had offered up some support for those.
Thank you. So did the cost estimates that were given for either the tiny houses or the campgrounds factor in ADA access and ADA compliant porta potties, et cetera?
So the cost estimates included, one of the most expensive items was fencing. So it's a relatively realistic cost on the fencing. Porta potties, the way I estimated it was not necessarily the city buying them or any organization buying them, but the cost for monthly and annual maintenance of those. Same for the garbage. Then there, even with the tent sites, most of cities have the observation or assistance houses associated with them, so purchasing those. So the cost estimates were really rough, and you know, I knowingly overestimated. I'd rather overestimate than underestimate, and so I think that if council directs us to look into that, I consulted with engineering a little bit, but we would have to get an engineer to really put some time into doing an estimate if that's what council wants to know what the actual cost would be. Though I would like to remind council that it was really the thought that a third party would be operating and footing all of these costs, and the city, if anything, would be providing the property and some oversight on what the rules would be. And so I don't know if the cost would be different if they are implemented by a third party or by the city.
Thank you. Can I keep going, or I have two more? Okay. So perhaps for Greg, or which entities have come forward thus far to act as that third party to manage and support any of these options, or have there been a third party offering?
I wouldn't say we're to that point where we've gone out and solicited a third party. I think the purpose in this meeting was to really find out what direction the council would want to go, so I think we thought that was just probably still a little premature.
And then what were the right circumstances identified by the houseless people that were surveyed by the EPD? I guess I haven't seen the CHIP report. Perhaps if it's in there, I'll look at it on my own.
Which circumstances?
In your presentation, you mentioned that under the right circumstances, most people would that were surveyed would be willing to be housed.
Yeah, this was a very imperfect survey instrument. We were looking for the greater picture of would people be willing to accept housing if it was offered to them. I believe it was 71% said that they would be willing to accept housing, but we did not get down to any granularity as far as a full structure or a location such as a tent city.
Okay, thanks.
I don't have a lot of questions. I have a couple of comments. What I was thinking would be a good thing for us to do is I think we do need to concentrate on rapid rehousing. That is the best thing. But it is also the most expensive thing. And the way our low income and very low income housing has gone historically has been to have to get a big grant from the government and then have to spend a lot of money for a contractor or developer to develop apartments to the level that our California building code really requires in order to house people, and it ends up being so expensive that you can only do one. You know, you can only do one apartment complex and that's it, and then we're stuck again. And with the tiny house sort of approach, and not tiny houses, I like the detached bedroom idea because tiny houses to me seem like the television show. If we could have a pilot project, and I understand that there might be funding for someone to write a grant for a pilot project out there for like a year and lease some city property to a third party for a pilot project and build those little houses from the people who are living there, not having the contractors come in and the developers come in, but the actual people who are starting to live in the little community build those houses. I think that it could be a lot cheaper and it could work a lot better. Now, it's not going to solve, you know, the whole homelessness problem, but it might give us a footing to start on. And that's kind of what I've been thinking, reading all this different stuff. I love the rapid rehousing. I know we don't have any supportive housing units available. I've asked that question. I know there's 0 on that. So, and we need a lot of those for people with serious mental illnesses and substance abuse problems. But that's something we're going to have to work out with the county. And if I understand it right, now that we have better health care payments coming in, we might be able to actually get some money to do that. And that's something to look at in the future. But I think right now, if we just make a step, so we're making an actual, real, concrete step instead of let's have another go around with the folks who are recommending. I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't get implementation of this whole project going on, but dang, we've been studying an awful lot, and we need to do something.
There was a gentleman that sent me an email and had a reference to a study that a gentleman from Berkeley, his name was Chris Herring, he went and he talked to a whole series of these same towns that had these sanctioned homeless camps. And I read a lot of stuff about the fact that there's third-party people running it tends to keep the cities or the entities from being like liable for anything that's happening, so it decreases insurance issues for the cities and stuff like that. However, while I was reading this study that he did, which was just went on forever, one of the facts that came out that jumped out at me was he said, in fact, not a single homeless camper interviewed across the wide variety of encampments, which is like the tents, the little houses, and the authorized camps and the unauthorized camps, said they were camping due to the inability to access shelter. Instead, they claimed to be camping because they found the shelter's constraints, treatments, and dangers to be dehumanizing and infantilizing. And I think that this whole thinking that we're going to, by creating a subset of separate or dispersed or whatever group of people that have a right to a certain area and to be, that isn't he's saying that isn't their issue, that they're camping because they don't want to, they feel in danger in certain of these camping situations, and they don't want to deal with the constraints. And so thinking about that, and then realizing when I went to that AHA meeting up at the Women's Center, the Women's Club, they were talking about it cost, and I think I read this in the paper too, they said that it cost $100,000 to build the 30 houses in physical, actual construction costs, and then it took another $100,000 in donation, donated time and in-kind type things. So again, that's $200,000 to make 30 bedrooms, essentially, that are in a certain area, that kind of thing. And again, I want to see if we've started a process, and I was not a part of that process like Melinda was, but they started a process with the general plan update, and I'd like to see that implemented, because I don't believe that creating camps, you know, there's just myriad problems with that, and that the people that first inhabited the 30 units that were built up in Eugene, that apparently something like 30 or 40% of those people were removed because they couldn't deal with that the structured living. So I'd rather see us, that's my personal, take on it, I'd rather see us focus on the focus strategies that have already been started than to create this campground somewhere, perhaps on city property, perhaps on county property, who knows. A lot of the problems that we have here in Eureka are because we are a county seat and because we are where the benefits are dispensed. And so we see, I think, people going from point A to point B and back, walking through Eureka back and forth to get access their benefits and what they need, the free food or whatever. And so I would like to, I don't think that that's going to be the best solution. And so I would prefer to just go ahead and see what the implementation plan would be for the rehousing and that kind of thing for those people who are willing to do it. I just believe that not a lot of them are going to be willing because they have their own agendas. Thank you.
Comments right now? Just speaking from my point of view is that we have to do something now in regards to the people that are impacting our wetlands and the habitat areas along the bay. The longer we allow camps to be built in that area, the worse it's going to get. And so I would certainly be in favor of something on a small scale to try out and see how it works. But we've got to do something to protect some of these wildlife areas and wetlands areas that are being severely impacted by what's happening in that areas. So, Linda, you had a comment.
And the other part of this, even if we didn't go forward with a request for proposals for a pilot project, which I'd love to see, is I would like to see us incorporate into our general plan update the ability of private people to build a community of detached bedrooms and common areas so that we can create some housing in our community that is affordable and on a real basic level, not a $300, $400, $500 a month affordable, like a $200 a month affordable or a $50 a month affordable. And that can be done, but our codes and our zoning and that sort of thing prohibit it now, but we could fix that.
Natalie, go ahead. All right, Kim.
Well, I've been sitting, am I on? Yeah.
Turn on.
Well, I've been sitting listening to everything that I've heard, and there is no, we've talked about this before, there is no one-size-fits-all answer to this problem. And I think that if we're going to look at that in that regard, we're going to fall short. I think we need to be open-minded about it. I agree completely with rapid rehousing. I think it's going to be an amazing, amazing gift to our city. It's going to help a lot of folks. We're going to be able to move people through, help them up. I don't know if help them up is the right word necessarily, but give them opportunities to integrate into our society. There's so much good about that. But there are people, you know, that, and then the other thing I want to say about that is education. There needs to be that piece. And that's what I like about the rapid rehousing. The expectation that we're going to put somebody in a house after they've been out there for 10 years and that they're going to be successful because we put them in a house, that doesn't make sense to me. Having education, having social workers, and having people working with them, maybe substance abuse counseling, that is where people are going to be successful. I am open-minded to the idea of the tiny houses and the tents. When I first heard this idea, I was not. But I feel like we do need to create different opportunities, because just like no one in this room is exactly the same, people that are out there living are not exactly the same, and they have different needs. And if we think that we're just going to, you know, put them behind a fence or put them in a place to live, there needs to be support that goes with that, is I guess the big piece of the puzzle. And I would like to see us take some action in one direction at least, whether it be the rapid rehousing and being willing to look further into that, or whether it's to start with the looking into properties, but we need to do something. And this business of it being a choice to be out there, I strongly disagree with that. I believe that at some point, some of these people lose the power of choice, and that's through addiction, and that's through mental illness. And those people, which are not those people, which are us people, need to be treated with the same respect and dignity that we all have in here tonight. So, thank you.
Natalie? Go ahead.
I'd like to thank the staff for giving us such a well-rounded approach and some information from all the different perspectives, because I think it really helps to understand that we are having challenges environmentally, liability-wise, and in many other areas. So it's harming business in some respects, and I think that approach is helpful. So thank you. I do want to know a little bit more, but I don't want knowing more to get in the way of doing something. I think we need to start small, but I think we need to start something, and I'm actually in favor of, first of all, not standing in the way of those who want to help, who have been trying to help for many years. So whatever we can do to get out of the way, I think we should be doing, and if that means changing or examining codes and ordinances, I think we should consider it. And I also believe that we can study this all we want and how it's worked in other places and come up with assessments, but we won't know how it's going to work here because of our specific community and its all of its qualities until we try it. So I support a small-scale pilot project with time constraints for starters, and I'd like to see us try out all the options. And I believe that we also need to see third-party partners step up and offer their support. So I would be very interested in personally talking to anyone who has has that capacity. I definitely don't want to see us abandon the goal of the housing outlined in the policy paper. So I don't think that another approach means that we're abandoning that plan. So I think we just need to try an interim measure until we have more affordable housing. The reason I asked the question about how many housing units are available for rapid rehousing is I suspect that it's not very many, but I'd love to know more about that. And I just wanted to point out that when we're talking about numbers of homeless people, the point in time count is by many people seen to be somewhat flawed. But as of 2013, we're talking about 600 homeless people in Eureka. However, that includes people who are living on sofas or with others or in certain situations where they wouldn't be immediately in need of housing for their immediate safety and security and well-being. So I think getting a better idea of what that is, I look forward to this year's point in time count, but I'd like to see some way of assessing that a little bit more thoroughly so we have a better idea of what that is. Thank you.
Okay. Melinda, before you, I have a question. We've talked about rapid rehousing, and I just need to get an idea of what that really means. We identify 10 people that can be rapidly rehoused. Where are those houses, and who pays for them, and who monitors what's going on there? Do we have an answer to that? Do we have houses available that we can rapidly, or is this something that's developed over a period of time, or how's that work?
We don't currently have a rapid rehousing program. I think we really don't have a city housing department. We have one housing program manager that works to bring in certainly some of the state and federal grants on housing projects, but we do not have, in a sense, that type of a rapid rehousing that we need to access those types of programs to move that forward.
And we have a time frame on when that could occur?
Information available right this minute. I can research that for you, and I would say that that would be a major component of the implementation plan that Focus Strategies would do on our behalf, is to answer that question specifically.
Okay. Melinda, go ahead.
Well, just to respond to that, that is something that we really need to work with the county on. They definitely have the resources and the funding, and I think Director Crandall was speaking to the piece of the assessment, and that's where we identify the people that could benefit most for the rapid rehousing. So that is like the first key piece to that. Obviously you could tell I'm not supportive of a campground. I think it would be a disaster. Even the models that are identified up in the Oregon and Washington area where they move every 90 days is, they do that because nobody wants to take the responsibility of having to deal with them for more than 90 days. It's a huge, huge undertaking. But clearly in this report and by the experts, and you all can say, who are they? Well, there are people that have implemented plans all over the United States that campgrounds or managing this problem is not the answer. So I would like, and believe me, I know you're all new and such, but we did put a lot of time and effort, and a lot of people participated in putting this white paper together, as one would say. So I appreciate Rob going out there and asking what the follow-up to that is, and I would be very interested in seeing a scope of work on that. And I think it's a pretty minimal cost for a worthy effort to get us going in the right direction to implement what we've already adopted. I don't oppose changing some ordinances or to allow a nonprofit or a private person or company that wants to donate a bunch of money and build tiny houses. I think we could cooperate with that, but I really am leery of the impact that's going to have on the bigger problem. It'll help a small number of high-functioning people that can work in a communal living environment, but I don't know that that's going to impact the types of people that we're targeting that are causing police calls and fires and all sorts of bad behavior that the merchants are putting up with. So are we making motions, or are we just directing staff?
Well, staff
What are you
needs
expecting?
direction, so it sounds like they're going to get mixed directions, but they need direction from the 5 ladies up here as what to do.
Well,
or
my
what direction to go.
My direction would be to pursue a scope of work with focused strategies for an implementation plan and see where that leads us to start with.
And I would like to see what the CHIP group came up with. I would like to see this whole having the evaluation teams working to point out and find out which people are creating the most problems and to deal with those people. And I just think that it's just not about housing. It's also about this whole who is out there and what are their issues. And I think that the CHIP and this focus strategy tries to get at that and is getting at that. And we haven't given it a chance. This has only been just this last few months that we've been looking at all this. So I would like to see us give that a chance before we go into a complete tent city or whatever that I think some of the people in the audience are thinking is the best answer. So I'm agreeing with Melinda, and again, it's we're looking at a lot of our ordinances, our codes and that kind of thing, and like even the idea of being able to build secondary dwelling units, which would be more affordable, we're going to take a look at that, because those units, there are tons of places in town that there are lots of carriage houses, for example, that if we get our ordinances or our codes set up properly, that those could be made into secondary dwellings, which are more affordable. There are already existing buildings that could just be remodeled, that kind of thing. But we have some issues about parking and off-street parking and that kind of thing that we're still looking at those. Or, you know, somebody wants to build a secondary dwelling unit, which is for the handicapped or the people, and that person wasn't able to do it because it was a few feet, 50 feet, 100 feet bigger than what is by ordinance, or it's by code, I guess, allowed. And so we need to work on that kind of thing because, again, we could have a lot more housing available if we were just more creative and thought outside the box, and we're working with what we actually have extant here in Eureka. So just wanted to give some more thought to that because, again, we've got some plans. We've had some people put their brains together and come up with ideas about how to get to the root of the problem. Thank you.
Since we have such a diverse kind of input coming in, I think I want to make a motion. I would like to make a motion that we investigate a pilot project for having and I don't like tent cities, so a detached bedroom campground built and by a third party, and have a defined space of time, a year, year and a half, to see if that's going to work out. And I'd also like to see us move forward with the implementation of the rapid rehousing study.
I'll second that.
We moved to second. Any additional discussion?
Well, I guess clarification. So exploration of, are you talking about, you call them detached housing, are you talking about the tiny houses and not a campground? Okay.
Question also for clarification. Were you saying that this exploration is to find funding to do this, or to find property, or to find third parties, or what's that aspect?
To see if there are third parties. I know that there's grant funding out there. I know that there's grant funding to write the grant out there. I don't know who the third party might be, who might be interested in running the place and writing the grant and getting the money to do that. So I don't know any of that. What my motion is about is exploring that and seeing where it goes.
And as part of that would be locating a site and deciding whether it's Cooper Gulch or down behind the Bayshore Mall or some of those other sites that they showed.
It could be.
That was is that a part of that?
That could be, yes.
To figure out where a site would be.
That could be, yes.
Natalie, go ahead.
Can the motion be amended right now? Okay. I would like to recommend that we amend the motion to ask for recommendations for site constraints from staff. So an initial suite of recommendations on what those site constraints might be, factoring in wetlands or whatnot.
That's fine, I accept that.
Yep. She accepts the motion. So there's amendment.
And another clarification, so we're also going to spend the $21,000 for the implementation scope of work.
Absolutely.
Okay. Gotcha.
Any other questions or comments? Let's vote on the motion.
Unanimous yes vote. Motion carries.
Okay. All right. We'll move to item 11 then. Samoa Field Airport Bed and Breakfast Facility Lease. Who has that one?
Mr. Mayor, as Lisa and I believe Bruce are coming up, did just want to note, it does say on the staff report to authorize staff to negotiate and execute a lease. I think we would still want to bring that lease agreement back to City Council for approval once it's completed.